This is the Music Maestro podcast. This time I'm joined. The word legend is thrown about quite a bit. I think it's safe to say that in the industry, you are known as a bit of a legend. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Wolfie. Wolfie, why don't you tell us a bit? Well, there's a lot I want to talk about.
Well, thank you for the kind intro, first of all.
You are a legend in my eyes. Do you remember our first proper interaction?
I think it was at... All right, well, it's either at Ministry.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm not saying that's the right answer. Or
in the canteen at Sony in
You've
Kensington.
remembered it?
Yeah.
Okay, so without bringing the mood down to like low,
Yeah.
my brother had just been killed in a car accident, so I'd taken a month off at Sony, and I didn't even really know you that well. I hadn't met you at Ministry, I don't think. You were working opposite us for a period when we'd first joined Sony, and I didn't know you, really. You walked straight over to me when I came first day back in the office after that, and you fucking hugged me and basically didn't let go for about a minute and just said like something like, "I'm so sorry, mate." And so when I say legend, that's where that comes from. And so I think from there, obviously, well, I hope for a bit of a friendship, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Legend,
100%.
So there's a lot I want to talk about. There's you and your kind of iconic partnership.
Yep.
Leighton and Wolfie, dynamic duo.
Yeah.
There's obviously the kind of career path and where you kind of started and where you're at now. There's also an interesting thing I want to talk about with you and your ADHD diagnosis, something that's quite recent, but I think it'd be good to talk about as well.
Absolutely.
Because I think there's a lot of us that have got it, including me, I'm convinced.
Yeah, I think so. Explains a lot.
So let's as always go back to the very beginning. Music, where did it all start for you?
I've been into music as far as back as I can remember, and I've always been a bit of a wannabe, I think. So I think it started with I'd be in my bedroom listening to the chart show, pretending to be a radio DJ with a cassette player and whatnot, and just doing that and, recording the chart and listening to music. That was probably my first kind of foray into it. And then it's just always been a love of mine, I think after that, you then start exploring and wanting to know what's what. And, this is back in the day, you'd go to your local record shop and you'd just flick through records and, pick something that's interesting and, take it home and listen to it. That was, where it all really, started for me.
So, sorry, and I want to, we're going to continue down this path, but I just realised a question that I was asked by the team, and I actually don't know the answer. What's your real name?
Scott Wolf.
I thought it must be Wolf. I don't know if I knew the Scott bit.
Yeah.
So I guess Wolf is quite an obvious nickname then, isn't it?
It is like a family.
I thought it was because of your kind of look. Okay.
No, it's a bit of a family nickname actually. So, like my uncle had a restaurant in Canada called Wolfie's, and so it's a it's been bandied around.
So when you were younger, what kind of music were you listening to?
I mean, it started off as pop because it was chart music, and that was what I was listening to, and then closely followed that with a lot of my friends' older brothers were into two-tone and reggae and stuff like that. And, this is kind of, around the explosion of that sort of scene. And, that was really exciting to me, so bands like Madness and The Specials and Selector and, I was so into that. And also really inspired by the fashion as well. And I think that's the first time that I really, I've been obsessed with youth cults as well. So I really like the way that music and fashion intertwine. Still find that amazing to this day. So, so that was, really getting switched on to a scene and a genre really. And about that time, I think probably 13, I think I saw my first gig, which was Madness in Hammersmith.
Massive.
Which was which was just a surreal moment for me, So, it was,
Are there any kind of like particular songs when you think back to your earlier days, all the way back then? That kind of evoke that kind of nostalgia, I guess.
One Step Beyond. still, it's just, such an amazing record. But I think, Mirror in the Bathroom, I mean, another absolutely amazing Ghost Town, another really phenomenal record. And I think they really they were quite visual, they're very descriptive records, you kind of knew what was going on, or it was really describing, a time and a place. So, they always take me back to that.
Okay, so from that point then, and I guess your early interest in music, what age are we talking? You said 13.
That was like probably about, I think that was probably, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, so like, late 70s, early 80s.
And then you said, you left school at 15?
Yes, I left school at 15.
And is that the point then that you decided I want to go and work in music?
Do you know, it's really weird. I had never thought I could go and, work in music. I'm not musically talented, but I've always loved being around creative people, and always gravitated towards anyone who's got a creative talent, whatever that is. It's art or music or performance. And I hadn't really ever put two and two together, and careers advisors was banking or building was, I think, the two big career options at that point. But I hadn't really thought about it, and I just thought, I didn't get on well at school, and the ADHD thing I didn't really know till recently, but it explained a hell of a lot, why that didn't really suit me.
Yeah.
And I left school, just before my 16th birthday, and went to work in NatWest Bank.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that's where it all started. Okay, fine. Yeah. And so then, and when did you jump from banking to music as a career?
I had done a lot of different jobs. I think, part of the thing of ADHD is you can't really settle in one thing, or if you're not into it, you're never going to last in it. So I bounced around a huge amount of jobs and ended up hanging out with a lot of mates of mine who were in a band. And I was just like, this is amazing. I just want to be around that more and more. And then through that, this is probably 94.
This is London Music Management or not?
So London Music Management. So basically, hanging around with them, turning up at their gigs, setting up stuff. I'd take the bass player, so making sure all his rig was sorted. And then, through that, got talking to the management company, and then ended up working there. They had an office in Oval Road in Camden. And it was, basically running demo tapes around or going to studios when the bands were in, and, general, runner and dog's body. And I would literally happily do whatever, as long as I could be around, people that were creating music.
So, it's based on the dates that I've got in front of me. It sounds like you did this for a good stint, because
probably 2 years of doing that.
And then what? Because so what followed London Music Management? Because what I can see here is when you set up on your own in 2002.
Yeah. So around this time, I was going out. A lot of my friends, I'd gone through, loving loads of different types of music, hip hop in my teens and, other things. And then really switched on to kind of electronica and dance in the, acid house era, late 80s and 90s, and spent a lot of time going to clubs. And, friends of mine were either DJs or promoters. And I was really, I just really loved that scene. And I thought I wanted to, put, producers and get records put out. This was quite early on. And I managed to set up a couple of meetings with the management company to sort of say, look, this could be a good thing. We could have a little dance imprint. And it didn't really work out. And I was getting frustrated that it wasn't working out. And in the back of Mixmag, there was a kind of, £99 2-day music business overview course, and I went on that for 2 days, and it was broken down into different classes of pressing, licensing, A&R, legal, promotion was obviously one of them. And at the end of that, I got a call from one of the people who was doing the talk on promotion, and said, would I like some work experience? And I was like, you know what? Yes.
Yeah.
So I kind of stopped the management side and thought, I'm going to, just get a bit of work experience, learn a bit about part of the industry, and then set up my own dance label. And 3 weeks turned into 3 months, and turned into 4 odd years.
Okay.
But that was my first job in promotions.
So then comes, I say fast forward, it's quite a lot of years, 8 years we fast forward from 94 when you started at London Music Management to when you decided to set up your own thing, which was Hungry Media.
Yeah.
Where did the name come from for starters?
Hungry like the wolf.
It's genius. Why did you decide to set up your own thing rather than go like the traditional route?
I really loved my time with Appearing, where I started promotions. You know, I learned a huge amount. Scott Appearing was an amazing guy, and actually the reason why I'm Wolfie rather than Scott Wolf, because there were two Scotts at work.
Yeah.
And so he was like, "What do people call you?" So I'm like, "Well, Wolfie's a nickname." So, it stuck, and it was one of the best things that ever happened to me because everyone. You know, it's an iconic brand. It stuck out. Yeah. It stuck out, and it was really beneficial because people were like, "Oh, I've heard of Wolfie," or
Yeah.
So it was really, really nice. It was brilliant, and you know, it was a real learning curve. You know, I worked with some incredible artists, did some amazing things, and I really, you know, went full circle back into radio and the thing I started loving when I was a kid, and still love today. You know, I think it's such a immediate medium. You know, it's like there's nothing quite like it. You know, and so unfortunately, Scott died in 2000, and the company didn't really stay the same. You know, it ended. And I went around a few other companies, but then I was kind of felt ready to go on my own journey. And, you know, I'd always had entrepreneurial people around me growing up. And it's always something I'd always wanted to do was, you know, do my own thing and work for myself. So it just felt like the logical next step.
Okay, so big leap, and so you're doing your own thing for what, like we're talking 5 years, and how did that journey, I guess, going on your own go from when you started to the next part?
It was a leap of faith. I think I had two clients actually. Fabric was one of them. And, you know, I was doing the compilations, their monthly compilation, Fabric Live, which was phenomenal, and working with some great people there. And then, literally just, you know, I'd had obviously interactions with people for, you know, 6 odd years by that point. So I knew managers and I knew some labels, and, you know, I started getting calls, and, you know, it just rolled from there. It really did. And it was amazing because also it allowed me to, you know, get people into the business as well. And, you know, that's the thing I'm really passionate about is, you know, getting young people, new people into the industry.
Cool.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to touch on that again in terms of getting people into the industry. So the next part is because where there was, I remember there was like a social trend, name a more iconic duo. And I think when I say Leighton and Wolfie, name a more iconic duo. Quite renowned in the music industry. When I think of other iconic duos, I think Del Boy and Rodney. Is that fair?
Read my mind.
Is it really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd say you're Del Boy and Leighton's Rodney.
Yeah, possibly. although no, you know, I think there's a bit of both in each of us, to be honest.
So then, I guess formidable partnership. Yeah. How did that come about? And we're talking 2007 now. Yeah.
Yeah. An interesting thing is that there's a few pluggers, as what the industry term is for promotions people, pluggers. Yeah. There's a few of us all started in 96, and, you know, a lot of the job is hanging around radio and hanging around where people are going to be, and, you know, door stopping and creating up, you know, chances to talk to people or hand them a record. And, you know, the pluggers always, you know, would either be in a cafe or hanging around together or some event or another. And so as a few of us all kind of, you know, came up together, and Leighton was someone that, you know, we'd always kind of got on with, very similar backgrounds, similar ages. But he went in the major route first, and I'd always been independent. And, you know, it depends on how you're schooled, really. I think anyone who starts in a major is like, oh, major's the best thing in the world. And everyone who starts independent is like, oh, this is the best life. Yeah. So it was, we'd always have these conversations. But, you know, I was just like, anyway, it came to a point. So we'd known each other for years, talked about it. And I was always like, mate, you know, come indie, man, it's brilliant. And he was like, no, majors, you know. And to be fair, it swings as a pendulum,
Yeah,
it goes
yeah.
back and forwards. Anyway, he was at Sony BMG, and he called me one day. He said, "Mate, I've been let go," and I was like, "Right, okay." He said, "I don't know what to do," and I was like, "Mate, don't worry. Like, come on, let's meet for a coffee, and I'll talk you through it. I'll set you up, and there's Leighton Woods promotions, and you can crack on."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Brilliant." So we went through all that process, and literally as we were doing it, we were like, you know what? Actually, between us, we've got a lot of the genres and presenters and producers covered in our contacts, and it was almost like 50-50, like he had all that like this, and so we were like, you know what, why don't we try doing something together, and we did, and we had a great success, and we tried another one that was great, and then it just cemented, and then we became Hungry and Woods,
And this is 2007.
yeah.
Okay, the beginning of another exciting journey, I guess. So Hungry and Woods starts 2007. That's the beginning of this relationship between you and Leighton.
Yes.
You do that for 6-ish, 7-ish years before that, I guess, the big next step, which is when Epic Records, part of Sony, decide to bring you on board, right?
Yeah. Obviously, when we're doing our own thing together, Leighton had a lot of contacts within Sony because he'd worked there, and one of those was Simon Cowell, and we did pretty much most of the records off the X Factor, and it was a phenomenal baptism of fire for me because I had been on this indie alternative background and now been thrust into this pop space, and it was incredible. So we really did all of that, and then through that, Sonny Takar, who was running Psycho at the time, recommended that the then chairman of Sony speak to us about doing promotions for Epic, and then that's how that came about.
So then when did it change from just looking after Epic to then looking after more of the labels under the Sony music?
When Jason Eiley started,
right?
I think he really saw the benefit of what we did, and was like, I want you to do that, but I want you to be able to do it, for some of the smaller JV labels that don't have promotions teams, and it went from there really, and that's kind of how it all started, and yeah. Fortunately, it's still going.
So that's 2015?
2013, I think.
2013.
Yeah.
I thought,
14. Sorry.
As in when did the whole
2014.
2014. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's 2014. We're now 2024. That's a good 10 years innings you've done with Sony.
Yeah.
But before I guess we get on to how things have changed during that time, I want to go back to Leighton.
Yes.
You've been how long has that you've been working together? Since 2007. That's
it's a
chunky amount.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
What's the relationship like between you two?
Do you know what? Amazing.
Yeah. Are you bezies?
Yeah, absolutely.
Put you on the spot there.
No. Absolutely. I think our relationship's grown the more we've worked together. And I think before we partnered up, I had a lot of people going, you sure about this? Partnerships can be really difficult, and I was like, I don't think that. I'm always quite positive in terms of, I try and be positive in outlook, and I was like, you know what, it works well. It fits as a business, and it's honestly been amazing, and it's been phenomenal having someone to bounce off. It's been amazing, not just the buck stopping with me, and I think anyone who's run their own business will know at the end of the day, it's like, it all comes down to you, and just being able to have someone day to day is like, mate, I'm having a fucking shitter today. Do you know what I mean? Like, do us, can you carry on? And he's like, brilliant, and vice versa. And, we've never had one disagreement.
That was going to be my next question. Is surely with any great relationship comes fallouts at some point.
Yeah. No, we have different views on things, and I think that's the beauty, and we accept each other's views on stuff. But we've never, we've just we don't fall out.
Okay, amazing. So let's go back then. I think there's two things I want to cover here. Firstly, when you set out, and I guess with Hungry and Words, and when you first brought into Sony, you fell under the umbrella of radio promotions.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
What is radio promotions?
Essentially, we orchestrate the radio campaigns for artists, singles and albums. And in a nutshell, it's like when you hear a great song and you want to tell your mates about it, you tell your mates about it. That is what we do.
Right.
But,
But your mates in radio.
Insert producer, presenter, where you put mates, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And very early doors in this, in what we were doing, you would, wait for people and doorstop them or chat to them at a gig or whatever. It wasn't very structured. And then over time, it became you'd have set appointments with certain producers, and then you'd have set appointments with heads of music, so you'd always have to just literally doorstep someone as they're walking out of work and go, hey, can you take this record? Mm. And back then, you would literally hand them a record, or you'd do something ludicrous like dress up like, I don't know, a policeman to do promote a record, and just anything to gain some attention. Or what are you doing here? Oh, we're doing this record. And it's, and it was very like that. And, if anyone really wants to know what it's like, watch Spinal Tap and Artie Fufkin from Polymer Record. We're the guy that's we're the person between radio stations and the record company and artists.
Okay.
And, essentially what we want to do is build relationships with the artists, with the people within radio. Okay,
so now I have two questions then, because obviously we're talking about radio in a traditional sense, because obviously over the last several years, streaming has just got bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where there is a consensus that radio is dead. What are your thoughts on that?
It's an interesting one, and we have these conversations quite a lot. I don't think it'll ever die. I really don't. I think there's a huge love and respect for radio. I think people forget how people listen and where they listen. And, it's easy sitting in a media bubble in London and kind of going, oh, no one listens, everyone's on Spotify. Go out, speak to farmers, truck drivers, office workers, factory workers, people doing a night shift, anyone who is remote, they rely on the radio. It's comfort. I think what really hit home actually had the importance of radio was over lockdown, because we were all locked up, going slightly crazy. Actually it was a friend who was communicating, what we were all going through and what we were feeling. And, I still think I have a huge belief in the importance of that. And I don't think there's anything else that does or can replicate it at all.
What it has done, though, obviously, is during your time at Sony, whilst you started doing promotions, you are now director of promotions at Sony Music, correct?
Yes.
And so how has it changed your role within Sony? Because now under promotions, it's not just radio, right?
No. And TV was something that we'd kind of always, wanted to kind of be involved with, because it just one less conversation to have in the team. If we're doing it as a team, we're just very joined up on everything. So the right opportunity came along to do that, and it's been phenomenal, and that's literally only been within the last year. But yeah, it's been brilliant.
Can I test you?
Yes.
What are the subsidiary labels that sit under Sony Music UK?
Okay, so the main frontline labels are RCA and Columbia. And then outside that you have Insanity, Ministry, Black Butter, 5K, Epic, Music for Nations since 93, and Robots and Humans. Okay.
What about Sony CG?
You mean commercial?
Yeah.
I mean, commercial deals with catalogue.
Right. Yeah,
so, we deal specifically with frontline labels. So frontline is anything new. Yeah. And obviously catalogue deals with stuff that's
older classics.
Older catalogue.
Okay. So next question.
Yeah.
What is, having sort of been independent for a good chunk of your sort of starting your career.
Yeah.
What is it like working at a major label, and actually specifically, what's it like working at Sony Music?
I love Sony Music. It's the only major I've been at, and so I don't have a lot of comparison. But I obviously have friends that work at other labels, and I've it feels like home. We're quite. I think what we offer is an independent mind within a major label. I think that's it. And actually, I don't think we're on our own. I think there's a lot of very independently minded within Sony, and I think that's part of its success.
Yeah. I've just realised one you missed out.
Go on.
Relentless.
Oh shit.
But that's fine. Sorry, Ben.
Sorry, Shabs.
Okay, so obviously having that, you mentioned X Factor, you've done 10 plus years at Sony Music.
Yeah.
You have worked with some of the biggest artists of all time.
Yeah.
What I want to know is, during your time at Sony, what have been some of your standout highlight campaigns?
One Direction is, a particular standout. I think because it was just such a phenomena. And I think when anyone gets into the business, everyone, there's always like, oh, you should have been here before. It was like the the good days. And it's just, I'm always upbeat that, there's going to be big things to come, and, to have been part of something of that magnitude, it was like working the Beatles, and, you'd always be told, well, there'd never be another Beatles. But, that was literally what it was like, screaming girls around cars and just amazing. And the way I think it was one of the first things we saw of when the internet just blew up bands globally. Yeah. It was just phenomenal.
Do you think One Direction, this comes later with the this or that. I was going to say, Take That or One Direction.
One Direction.
Really?
Yeah.
For that so much bigger, were they?
Yeah.
Because I think of that late 90s, I guess it was, when that Take That thing happened. And that was massive. You obviously had the Spice Girls as well that did something, it's a girl band. But in terms of boy bands, One Direction, did they sort of do something different that had never been done before?
I like to think so. I think if you look at how Take That started, it wasn't anything like it ended up. But I think actually One Direction were like 5 different lads together. They weren't like a dance troupe dressed the same. And, and no disrespect to any of that. We work with Robbie and he's absolutely brilliant. So, but yeah, it was just that. Look. For me, it was an absolute blessing to be part of that.
So One Direction is peak for you, right?
And just in terms of the scale of it, and
What about more recently then?
More recently, this is very difficult. Do you know? Actually, Tom Grennan has been amazing. It's been just great fun working with him. He's a great lad. He's an absolute grafter, and he's an underdog. And I think that's been really satisfying. Working on that and getting him to a point where people love him and respect him, and he's growing as an artist. That's definitely been a nice. I mean, look, I love all the campaigns. I can't.
Well, I was going to mention like Little Mix as well, because obviously again, second to Spice Girls was Little Mix, or perhaps same argument as One Direction and Take That. Yeah. But I saw a clip of the Brit Awards coming up, and they are on stage accepting an award, and they name check you and Leighton. Yeah. That's massive.
Yeah, that was very, very lovely of them. They are lovely. They are lovely girls, and we're very fortunate. We continue to work with Jade. So, and again, I'm very, very excited for her future. So, but yeah, it was a crazy time, and I think they again equaled what the Spice girls are doing, and it was a phenomenal career, and again, total hard-working girls, and good fun. I mean, really good fun.
Quality.
Yeah.
We've touched on quite a few things there. I guess we've spoken about your time at Sony Music. I guess whilst we've spoken about how radio promotions has evolved, what is the role of a major label in today's industry? Because that seems to be changing at a rate of knots.
I think it's yes, but I think if you when a major label really gets behind and pushes, I don't think there's anything like it. I really don't. It's that, to be able to be globally joined up on something, I think is their real USP, but also I think, the people that work within the majors are, there's some absolutely genius people working there, and I think that's the thing. And they've, the major labels have evolved. There's new people, there's fresh insight, there's amazing presidents, amazing A&R. There's just great minds. It's a really exciting place to be. The way people look at campaigns and just having that collective, brain power on, right, there's the artist here. What are we going to do? How are we going to get it to that point? That for me is incredible. And I think that is the real strength of it.
Cool. Another thing to mention, I guess, is and we spoke about it before we started recording, was the work-life balance. And you were saying, I don't know if this is verbatim, but if work is not life, what was it you were saying? Like, because let's be like, the thing is that the music industry is renowned for being fucking intense, right? Full on, and actually too much for some people, right? How do you personally manage the intensity of working in an industry like music?
It's a really good point, actually, and I think something that a lot of people have to realise. It is a really intense business, and it's not for everybody. And, I think anyone who's worked in it for a period of time will have gone through really bad times and, hopefully come out of them. But, a lot of people haven't. And, I think before mental health was a thing, you'd see people who, chewed up and spat out a bit, So I think it's very difficult. It's never been a 9 to 5, it's not that business, it's a lifestyle, you can't help but live it. You wake up in the morning, the radio goes on, you think of a record, you watch TV, you look at a performance differently, you're you see adverts, you see gigs, your brain is always thinking about music and campaigns, so I think a big thing for me was, actually just a shift of mindset and going, this is my life. It's not work. It's my life, and it's what I make of it. And
I guess so. Treating it as if it wasn't a work, a job, a hassle.
Totally. I'm honestly count myself so lucky. I get to get up in the morning and go to a place of work and work with amazing creative people every day.
That's because we were mentioning there's a lot of people that wake up on a Monday morning and dread that.
Yeah, right? Totally.
You're one of the people, and I'd say in a minority that doesn't. You wake up and you're buzzing for Monday.
Yeah, totally. Can't wait. A whole lot of new challenges, and I think that's for me, the music business is the longest job I've ever had. And as for someone who has struggles with, sticking with things because of ADHD, it's the one thing that's kept me focused, interested, determined. It just works for me. It doesn't work for everyone. It works for me,
Okay. Well, I think you've mentioned ADHD there, which I think is good time to sit with this. When were you diagnosed with ADHD?
2019.
Okay. And so that is a good chunk of life where you've been living with this thing and not really knowing about it. How did ADHD affect you, and how does it now? Because obviously now it's been diagnosed, I imagine it's different.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, at school was the biggest obvious one. Trying to sit in a lesson where you're not interested in what anyone's saying and keep focused was just very difficult. So, all through school, it's like, you're disruptive, you're naughty, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and out of the room or a corner. So I just had this real like, this is not for me. School's not for me, and not then subsequently anything post learning in that wasn't for me. And then when I started work, it was like my first thing would be like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this for 40 years. And then I'd go. It'd be like, right, I've got to do something else. So I did, literally did everything. But with music, it was, I was into it. Every day is different. You're dealing with a lot of different people. There's a lot of spinning plates. It just really works for what I need out of something, But obviously there was still a lot of, negatives within it, sitting in meetings and concentrating was always very difficult.
Yeah.
Talking over people.
Finishing other people's sentences. Yeah, that's classic. Yeah.
Isn't it? And, like there's other things, saying stupid shit, like you just say inappropriate things at the wrong times. You know what I mean? What I will say is like since I've been diagnosed and actually the start of lockdown, sitting in a room, on my own all day was like, and there was other things around it and, everything started to go a bit, crazy. So,
So at what point, so was it lockdown then that you thought, what the fuck's going on in my head? I need to, did someone say to you, I think you've got ADHD, you need to go and see someone?
No, I think, my wife was very like, there's something going wrong here. You've really got to sort yourself out.
Right.
So I was like, no, there's nothing wrong. I feel like I've always felt.
Yeah.
And, I think it was like, oh, you're having a midlife crisis. I was like, Anyway, did a lot of exploring and reading and all of those things. And I met an amazing psychotherapist, basically. And I did a Zoom call. Someone recommended me to look, go and speak to this person. Did a Zoom call. And within 5 minutes, she was like, so tell me about yourself. You've got ADHD. And I was like, what? She went, you got ADHD? I went, no. She went, I think you might have.
Really?
And literally I was like, what do you mean? She said, I'm ADD. My husband's ADHD. I see a lot of late diagnosis patients. And she said, look, go and go through the process of getting tested. So I went through all of that. And it was like, straight down the middle.
Yeah.
Dead
cert.
Yeah.
So how do you manage it now then?
I take medication, basically. Right. So I take daily medication. So
and I guess then what different since you've taken that medication, what difference have you noticed in terms of, I guess, personal and professional life?
What the medication allows me to do is actually just quieten that impulsive brain bit, so I don't tend to finish people's sentences. I can sit and concentrate more. I don't react in the way I would have done before because you've got time to think about your brain process, whereas before it was like out your mouth and then you were, thinking about it. So it's been an amazing journey, and it's I think saved a lot,
in terms of living your best life, right? How do you think ADHD impacted that? And like if we were to give a percentage, where were you and where are you now?
It's really interesting. I don't think I'd be where I am today without it.
Wow.
So it's got me to to where I am because I think that kind of drive and restlessness has just kept me going, or that need to keep trying different, to do new things has driven me on. So I don't think I'd be where I am without it. But I think what it's done is just taken some of the rough edges off of it and just allowed me to just be at least a bit at peace with myself. I suppose that's, just quieten that inside voice down and just.
Okay, so what would you then recommend? I guess you can use me as an example because I'm sat here thinking, and I've been for years thinking I've got this, but I'm kind of plodding along and it's like, all good. What would be the reason for me to go and see someone? Like, why is it a problem?
I think it will present in a lot of different ways how people cope with it. So, when I was talking to my therapist about it, she said normally at your age when we see people, they're, alcoholic, drug addict, sex addict, whatever, so it's really unusual that you're here without those. Yeah. Gambling addiction, whatever. So, I think what happens is, you have people get through life and have certain coping mechanisms just to deal with it. I would say at some point they'll probably stop working. And I think that's what happened with me. My mechanisms just didn't work anymore in the same way.
Right.
So whether that's age or whatever it is. So I would say maybe try and get in early before it stops.
Okay.
Noted.
Right, okay.
But, also just read about it. Actually, I think for a certain age group, actually grew up with it being very negative, actually just being able to think and unpack that as not your fault.
Yeah.
Whereas, I think people grew up
beat
with
yourself up a little
100%,
bit.
100%.
Yeah.
So actually there's a lot there that I think helps mentally kind of going, oh, right, okay, well, maybe I wasn't such a tit.
Quality. Okay, that's good. I will
Please.
Go down.
I'll give you the name of my therapist.
Yeah, she sounds great.
She's amazing.
I want to talk about. Earlier we mentioned about like up and comers, people that want to get into the industry. I think part of the reason we do this podcast is like there's people in the industry that might be interested.
Totally.
There's people that might have an interest in music outside of actually liking songs or wanting to work in the business.
Yeah.
But there's also like, younger people that might be wanting to break into the industry.
Totally.
Like I had my path into it, you had your path into it. Like how do you, what is your advice to people looking to break into the music industry?
Well, I would say, just network as much as possible. Follow people, there's a lot of, kind of academies you can get into that will give, intros to music business. There's amazing charities. I mean, I work for with a youth club in Tottenham who's been brilliant, but also like Small Green Shoots do an academy where you can learn bits of the business over a period. There's a lot of Young Music Boss or whatever. There's a lot of resource there. BBC Bite Size is amazing. They're another great resource for finding out about what jobs or bits of the industry. Follow loads. Speak to as many people as you can. Sit and work out who if you know someone who knows someone. Most people are pretty receptive. If someone emailed me and said, look, I know maybe get a few more now, but would you sit for a coffee and talk through stuff? I'll happily give the time. If I can, because I think it's important to the industry to have young, fresh, diverse minds in it. I learn so much from the young people within Sony on the daily basis. And
they've got an internship program.
They have,
massively oversubscribed.
Absolutely. But most people will have an internship scheme, and that's across everything, not just the standard, marketing, promotion, A&R jobs. It'd be law, accounting. It's like if you're into music but you want to be an accountant, then go and work in, Go and work in finance in a label or something like that. It's, but also it's broader than that. It's, live music, where I started, there's so many people crying out for, techs, runners, drivers, crew, start wherever.
Lots
get
of ways
in.
To break in.
Totally. Go and work in a record shop, go and apply, talk to people. I think there's so many avenues now that people probably wouldn't realise are there. And also just, I would say if you're going to be in a business, just be about that business in whatever way you can. If you want to be in music, there's no point in working in a chicken shop, well, maybe.
Or NatWest.
Maybe, or NatWest, maybe go and work in a studio or go and work in a venue or go, just be around that business where your network will increase.
And opportunities usually arise, don't they?
Totally. You've got, you put, I think you get back what you put in. And if you're sitting at home going, nothing's happening, it won't happen.
I think the key word there, and it goes for any industry, is networking, right?
Totally.
Because you've just got to get yourself out there, put yourself in front of people, and like you say, you don't just sit there and expect it to happen. You've kind of got to really be in people's faces. Like there's a balance. Don't annoy people. No,
totally. But
you know what I mean?
Interestingly, Leighton, we talk about this a lot with our paths in. He was basically he was always at gigs in Camden. Like, always. And he just got to know people through going to the same gigs. And I think one day someone went, well, mate, what do you do? He was like, well, I'm just a fan. He was like, oh, right. He said, I work for BMG. Why don't you come in the office? And he was like, what? So, just from going out and being a fan of music, you'll meet someone who will be like, well, come in and see what's what.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, then. So there's one huge topic that's taking over the music industry at the moment, and that is TikTok versus Universal.
Yeah.
Obviously, the latest thing that's happened is obviously while Universal Music pulled their repertoire off the platform.
Yeah.
Now the other side, Universal Music Publishing, are now starting to take their repertoire off, which is gonna So no, it's not just Universal artists. I'm hearing the likes of Bad Bunny, Beyonce, Harry Styles. That music's going to come down. So for me, that's like a big deal. And if there are people using that platform that now all of a sudden can't use not just Universal Music, but artists signed to the big artists signed to the like of Sony, Warner, etc. What's your take on what's going on right now? And I guess without being a kind of speaker for the brand of Sony, when Sony are sitting on the sidelines, what are they thinking?
I think whatever happens, it's about the value of music, and I think music has a huge value, and I think people should be paid fairly for it. And I think that's part of the conversation about being fairly paid for using music, which I, totally back. It's creatives always, can get a bit of a raw deal, and I think people should, be compensated for their uses, I think it's a shame because I think it's it's been a brilliant discovery tool for a lot of people, and it's launched a lot of songs and, artists. But, there will be something else that will, take its place, or there will be something else that will come through. And, I think any of these, trending platforms are generational. So, my younger brother might be on one thing and I might be on another. And, that's something that will always, rotate,
Yeah. The evolution of social media, basically.
Yeah. Or music discovery.
Yeah.
But, also I've seen a lot of companies use the call of music to, set up and come through and build an empire, and then be a bit like, well, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah. So how do you? But I guess from what you're saying, and I'm not quoting you, misquoting. I don't think could this be the end for TikTok? Number one,
I don't think so.
How do you then see it panning out?
I actually think TikTok are pivoting away from short form and actually looking at longer form live video content. I think any of the adverts I've seen have all been, about longer form.
Yeah.
And I think, the way their business is probably going will be about longer form content, advertising and e-commerce.
Yeah. So basically closer to what YouTube is, I would say, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's sort of part of this discussion also, I feel like was this AI and like how AI is, well, it sounded like how AI is going to disrupt the music industry, but disrupt is quite a damning term. And I guess taking it away from the TikTok and Universal dispute, when it comes to AI, what positive things is this going to bring to the music industry?
I think AI as a tool, it could be really positive, but I do think, again, back to, creatives, if it's pulling from someone else's work and generating something else, then I think that needs to be, looked at. What I have seen is we had an artist called Absolutely who basically shot a load of AI videos for her album, and it was utterly mind-blowing and one of the best uses of AI I think I've actually seen with music. It was almost like she was using AI as an instrument, and and it works seamlessly with the music. Sadly, we can't do anything with it because of licensing agreements and again where those images are coming from. And I think that's quite relevant because musically AI, well, where is that music coming from? And I think that's the slight, but I do think there's amazing creative uses for it. I think we've just got to work out what they are and that everyone's, fair in it,
Okay, so aside from AI, then I'm interested to know in terms of the next big thing, trend, genre, or artist, or anything for that matter. What's your opinion?
I think the country music explosion has been incredible. Over the last year, that's been one of the biggest, global trends, really. And I think it's incredible how that has. I think everyone has a kind of expectation that, country music's like, white men with, trucks and cowboy hats, and actually I think what's been really exciting is people that have, on pushing the boundaries of what country music is,
Well, I mean, you've got you can see in the US, obviously with this Luke Combs and Morgan Wallen and what
totally,
they're doing,
yeah.
but then how that has sort of translated to, I guess, more traditional pop artists. They've got Lil Nas X.
Totally. I mean, Beyonce. Well, exactly. So I think Lil Nas X kind of kicked off that, explosion of, what is country and what is it, and I think was super interesting conversation around when that, launched. And then, with Beyonce at the moment, with, Texas Hold'em. I mean, it's just everywhere. But, there's other artists that have been pushing the boundaries. And, I find that's quite exciting, taking something, a genre and pushing it on. And, whether it's, Jelly Roll or, even Post Malone was performing at the CMA Awards with so Ed Sheeran turning up at Sea to Sea last. There's been a lot of moments and I think people love the storytelling, and I think that the authenticity of that and is what people like. So that's been really exciting.
All right, mate. Well, listen, I've that's just been a solid bit of podcast. Is there anything you want to chat about before we end it? Because I just say how much of a legend I am in return or something. Because if you want, only if you want.
No, you are a legend.
All right. Well, listen. Well, I guess. Well, do you anything?
Do you know what? I would just. The only thing I'd like to say is actually, I think there is a lot of thing about radio. It's like, everyone's dumbing down on it a bit, but actually, for someone to tell a story, or have an interview or chart a course of someone's career, it's pretty, there's not many other comparisons, and I think, still that first play that someone hears their record on air is still a big moment for artists. Their first, session, performance, whatever it may be, is still a big moment, and, I think that in itself is hard to beat.
I mean, listen, I love radio. If it was up to me, we'd be listening to radio all day, every day in the office, and I try to. These guys more on Spotify. But, I agree with you. I think, like you say, the whole presenter, the personality, the companionship, the vibe, I love all of that.
Yeah.
But then I'm the wrong side of 30. God knows. So I do wonder, really, it's like in terms of the kids and what's their opinion on radio. I guess that's sort of a big part of what it comes down to, right?
Yeah, I think so. But then I think that will change when it changes for them. At the moment, their phone is their, world. But, when they get out into the workplace, that will change. When they're in the car or driving around or, whatever, that will change. So I think there's, it's different for everybody how they, will get into it. But, and also, what I think is amazing, there's so many, if people even on a community level, that's, I think, where real excitement. And, there's some amazing community and specialist stations where, whether it's future presenters, producers, heads of music, A&Rs, whatever, they're there and they're working, they're doing it now. And they're, talking to their communities and they're bringing people up through their communities. And again, I think that's, that is phenomenal.
It's a great point because, to be honest, I always admire stations like Represent.
Totally.
And in terms of their talent pool and what they've taken out into commercial radio, it's insane, really.
Yeah, no, unbelievable. I mean, there's so many presenters or producers come up through there. Actually, a very good point. I know they're trying to raise funds at the minute.
Yeah, so let's mention
please go and donate to Represent. Buy a T-shirt or a hoodie and keep them going. Because the work they're doing is phenomenal. And the industry needs it. It's
Cool, man.
For again, another entry point for people. Go and find your local
totally.
community station, go and work, do a show, produce. Get in and get amongst it.
Yeah, totally. All right. Listen, mate, thank you so much for coming down to do it. Like I said to you before we started, you were the quickest person to ever get booked in and recorded. Everyone's always really long with that. And actually, you're the first guest who's from a major label as well. So
nice.
Big up you.
Thank
big
you.
up Leighton and Wolfie.
Yep.
Big up Sony. Nice one, mate.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me.